one thing that I see happening online is people who have audiences like both of us using treatments that of course get a lot of clicks and hits. Of course they start doing videos on rosemary oil, things like derma rolling, which we will talk about now. So it is something that they know people will search for, so they try to make content about it, but that doesn't show that this thing is necessarily working, or it's something that you should be starting with as the primary way of combating hair loss. It's like, maybe I could come up with a nice fitness analogy. There were times when they used to promote like a certain diet, like that's the diet that you should be doing to lose weight, like maybe it's a paleo diet, good analogy, but it's definitely not something that everybody should be doing. So it's the same with microneedling. So right now I think it's up to people and up to us hopefully right now to maybe disprove some of these claims and come up with really the most, I would say, accurate way of giving it a try, because it's something you can give a try, but you need to understand that it is not going to be the primary method. And even the doctors from the Hair Loss Show, who always nicely explain it on their whiteboard, they also say like it is not something we would be using as a primary way of tackling hair loss, which I think should be it's accurate. And right now it's all about like what is the best way to do it. So I know you have tried it with minoxidil for some time. So first maybe talk about our experiences before we come up with a conclusion, like what the guys should be doing here safely and effectively as far as utilizing microneedling for their hair regrowth.
So I actually tried it on its own, the derma roller, and this was recommended. This was years ago, because I've adjusted my protocol and I've had my protocol now fairly established and consistent for a very long time. But it was recommended by a doctor, and I thought, oh, okay, sounds like hocus pocus, but I'll do it. And I knew pretty much immediately rolling a device with needles on my scalp was a bad treatment. It was painful, it was invasive. I could feel what it was doing to the hair. And it just felt silly, like a silly thing to do. And I stopped. And then I really thought about it more and thought about just how damaging this thing could be. But we'll talk about that later. In terms of my experience, did I see anything? No. No. I mean, what did I see? I was on finasteride at the same time. A boost from that. Yeah, not from the derma rolling. Yeah. And I was on finasteride actually by that time quite a while. So I could tell that it didn't go from the derma rolling. Yeah.
And what was to specify maybe why you didn't see results? So was it caused by the device you have been using? So what was your routine like? Was it a derma roller with that, the usual roller, yes, 0.5 millimeter,
precisely.
Using it.
You do use it every day.
Every day.
Yeah.
Okay.
This was recommended.
Wow, crazy.
Yeah.
So right now we know that even if you're using the 0.5, that you shouldn't do it more than twice or three times a week, not every day. But even we will come back why even 2 to 3 times a week is too much at the end of this video, and why you shouldn't be doing it. Right now we, at least based on some studies on this needling therapy, we know that in order to stimulate the growth factors, you got to reach the bulge area that is like 1.5 millimeter deep, more or less. For this you would need ideally 1+ millimeter, but no more than 1.5 ideally, and that's why they made more studies that are like relevant for microneedling are on 1.5 millimeter. They are like the highest quality to be considered. Now, if he had used 1.5, would he see results? That's what I did. So I did 1.5 only microneedling while I was on finasteride, and I also didn't see anything, funny enough. Because I used the derma pen, because rollers are usually not that long with the needles, so I used the pen. But unfortunately, I also didn't see results after like 8 months. I have seen results, though, when I used the 0.5 millimeter roller with minoxidil. I've seen minoxidil, I was a better responder to it.
So minoxidil, it's working.
Yes. With the roller was better than without the roller.
Yeah.
But when I used the microneedling pen, 1+ millimeter, I didn't see any additional benefits on top of my finasteride regimen, which kind of goes in hand with what you have been also experiencing. If I could do it one more time, I think I would only recommend it to myself for using it with minoxidil, not as a monotherapy, because I just don't believe in it as a monotherapy. And I also am against using the rollers, because over time there is more research, and through my own experience, I realized that rolling caused a lot of plucking of hair, and also the damage to the skin is of course different. And I made the videos on it, like when the needle goes like this, you roll it, it creates V-shaped scar, and then it leaves the skin, so it's more invasive. So then I switched to the pen because it's going to be better for my skin, and it's going to go deep perpendicular motion. So any stamps, any needling that goes perpendicularly is on paper safe, because if it goes too fast and it doesn't have the ability to go in and out with the acceleration, then you cause micro tearing when you drag it too quickly. So there are many things, I think, how dermarolling can go wrong that people are not educated about.
It's a double-edged sword. With minoxidil, of course, if you have to. And it makes sense because obviously you've the stratum corneum, which is a barrier, and it's always going to reduce bioavailability for the minoxidil, and you're going to help the minoxidil have its therapeutic effect on the derm papilla, all these things. But I really just don't like it at all for a few reasons. When you dermaroll, should we say, one thing that you do is the typical individual will do this way too much. They'll do it every day or several times a week. And if you've thick hair, dermarolling is the worst.
Of course, yeah.
I'm not a good candidate for it at all.
Mm.
And what happens is, if you imagine the structure of the hair strand, it has what's called a cuticle on the outside. It gives it this lovely sheen. And then the inside, the cortex, medulla. Every time you dermaroll, you permeate this. You make it porous. And if you keep doing it, eventually it snaps, and you eventually cause the mechanical failure of the cortex. And then the hair strand is completely damaged. You have
and that's what people get, the frizzy hair breakage.
Exactly.
That's what you see on the surface. These are the expressions of those.
The cuticle is responsible for that, for the hair sheen.
For you, I think you really are going to do more harm than good. And because of that hair that you have, there is no way you're not going to damage or transect some hair, because there is more hair than there is bare skin to be reached by the pen in your case. And I think what we are missing is maybe a guide that would actually qualify, or on the other hand disqualify somebody from being an optimal candidate for the dermarolling or microneedling session. Don't do it
wet.
Okay, so why?
Well, guys, when you have a shower and you wet your hair, what happens is obviously the cortex swells, and the cuticle, which is the layers, the outside layers of your hair shaft, they're like tiles in a roof. So they open up. So you expose the cortex. So if you dermaroll when hair's wet, you directly, there and then, every time you do it, you cause mechanical trauma to the cortex.
You make your health incredibly vulnerable.
Yeah.
You break down the hydrogen bonds when you make it wet. So the hair is easier to be manipulated and kind of shaped. But at the same time, as you say, you open it up and then you can cause the damage. But that's what some guys actually realize now, hey, I can dermaroll with the wet hair because then I can feel it easier and I can cause the trauma sooner, because oftentimes when the skin is dry, they don't feel it, but after a hot shower, your skin is soft, right? And then it's you can just do it for a while and you feel that it's wounded and then you finish the session. But the drawback is, especially if you have longer or thick hair or dense hair still, you're gonna damage it, and you will see it after a while when you style it. Often when you blow dry, the hair will snap, it will break off, and it will be damaged.
Yes,
because frizzy hair.
That's because of something called porosity. And another thing is, the way the stratum corneum and the hair shaft itself is, it's actually an acidic structure. It's pH. When you start damaging this over time and you increase that porosity, you expose this to all of the environmental issues.
Yep.
The supermarket shampoos that we get, we all use them, Head and Shoulders. We don't order specialist shampoos, most people. A lot of these are very neutral in their pH. So now you're causing far more effects from their pH towards the hair shaft that you've really exposed through the derma rolling process, which is an acidic structure.
Yeah. I personally recommend I use personally the 5.5 pH from Sebamed. I use it always most of the time. I add some ketoconazole to it.
Very good.